I've been saving money to move to Japan for over 10 years. And I lost everything, not just once, but twice. And I still haven't made it to Japan yet. Why did this happen? Well, mostly for reasons beyond my control. I tried to avoid them, but it didn't work out. This video is going to be a bit all over the place since I didn't really prepare for it. It's more, I guess, a desire to speak out, to share my story. But not to complain, by the way, not to complain. It's just that this idea was inspired, pushed by my student from Canada. Thanks to him for that. And just so you can truly understand exactly how deep of a metaphorical hole, so to speak, I personally had to slowly climb my way out of. I'll be telling you my story, the story of my life, and I'll include photos so it doesn't feel abstract to you, so you can at least partially see. The path I went through with your own eyes, together with me, the way I saw it, how I went through it myself. Sometimes the video might break up a bit because it'll be hard for me to talk about this, honestly. I'm not a very emotional person. I'm very stubborn and you could say persistent. I always get what I want in the end, but even I sometimes lose my nerve. So, anyway, where should I start? Let's start with the fact that I'm from Russia, specifically from a small Siberian town. Although as a child I lived in a village, a very small Siberian village, with a population of about 500 or 600 people. And the nearest town was about 15 or 20 kilometers away, by car. I don't know how many miles that is, but maybe I'll calculate it and add it in somewhere. And then when we got older, well, life in a Siberian village is not a very easy thing. Actually, I'll be sharing stories from that time later, what I remember myself and what my parents told me, like how we stole a boat when we were 7, a metal iron boat that weighed about 150, 200, or maybe 300 kilograms. I don't remember exactly. And we slid down a hill on it, and my father taught me how to bathe, how to swim, how he rode horses and herded cattle. There are so many stories I could tell you, and they would just blow your mind. But that's not what this is about right now. Right now, it's about how I keep going. I've been working toward my goal for so many years, I've managed to grow a beard several times over, and shave it off completely several times too. I've even started to go a little bald already. But still, like a stubborn ram, I keep heading that way. Where I want to go? Whew, I'm even shaking a little. Sorry for telling it like this, but I'll try to include some photos for you. But there aren't that many of them, because I only got a decent phone with a camera pretty late. I actually come from a very poor and pretty modest working class family, and we didn't really have any extra money for expensive luxury things like that. And just by the way, I'm specifically talking about owning a mobile phone. Alright, let's go! So, after I was born and grew up a bit, we moved to a city with a population of about 1,050, and I basically lived there until I was 18. And then I moved to a bigger city, relatively speaking, with a population of 1 million people. But what's interesting is, when I lived with my parents in my small town in Siberia, I, as cliche as it may sound, saw Hayao Miyazaki's animation. And I really liked it, those cartoons. I watched Howl's Moving Castle and Princess Mononoke. It was just a revelation for me. Really something special. I even remember the moment when my grandmother sent me to herd ducklings or goslings so that they wouldn't get stolen by crows, birds of prey. We would let the little chicks out, and basically you had to watch them so the birds of prey wouldn't steal or eat them. They would peacefully nibble on the grass. I remember this moment so clearly. It was summer, and I went inside the house to get a drink of water. and the TV was on. My grandma had left it running and went about her business that summer. And at that moment, Princess Mononoke was playing. I thought, and I just got totally absorbed, lost in it. Then my grandma came in, saw me watching cartoons, scolded me, and sent me back out to herd the geese. But back then, it just made an indelible impression on me. This animation, that cartoon, it was really something else. Now it's actually really interesting to look back on it. So it got me interested. Why am I telling you all this, and how is it all connected? And from a certain point on, I would occasionally remember that cartoon, and I started writing my own stories. Stories that I wanted to share with people. And I ended up accumulating quite a lot of these stories. I was always coming up with something, always writing things down, sketching things out, and gradually, you kind of come to this realization. What is it? It's interesting to create your own worlds, to write stories about them, and you want to share your stories of people. This year, I am finally turning 19 years old and entering a new chapter. I'm just remembering that moment now and trying to somehow organize it all in my mind. I pack my things, say goodbye to my parents. Right now, I've got about 5,000 Russian rubles tucked to my pocket. At that specific time, that was worth around 200 American dollars. And I just leave my hometown for a big city, a city with a million people. I rent a room there and get a job. Out of those $200, I pay for a room in a dorm, an absolutely terrible dorm. I give $150 for rent, and I'm left with $50 for the month. Actually, even for a month and a half, I just eat plain rice. Honestly, if I tried to do that now, I just wouldn't be able to handle it. So I eventually managed to secure a new position, which was certainly not an easy task by any means. And I began working diligently at a local industrial power plant. At the very same time, I also spent my hours writing detailed scripts for various comics, and specifically for manga. I'm also studying Japanese on the side. And at the same time, I'm preparing for the Japanese language exam. Somewhere around here, maybe I'll insert some photos. Yeah, and this goes on for about 2 years. So I rent a terrible room in a terrible dormitory, and then after some time, I rent a slightly better room with a friend. We teamed up and started renting a slightly better room, but again, it was really expensive. Just so you understand, we didn't even have a bed at first. Later, we finally bought at least one bed so we could take turns sleeping on it because it was just awful. I remember I used to work sitting on this orange poof. We didn't even have a table. A poof is like a soft seat. I would put a box on it, then put my laptop on top of the box, open it up, and try to copy some graphic stuff, drawing and practicing. I typed, I wrote scripts on them, and at some point it hit me that I could use these scripts to pitch to publishers. I don't remember how I came across the information that you could pitch your story to a publisher. And they can find you an artist, but I decided to do things a little differently. I wrote to a publisher, actually to several publishers. I won't name the companies, and we basically I sent them my work translated into Japanese from Russian using a translator. I found a translator myself. A girl who I'm still friends with to this day. She really helps me out a lot, even now, even though it's been more than 12 to 15 years. She's just an amazing friend. I'm so grateful to her for that. So we translate my works and send them to Japan. And over there, somehow, one of the editors gets in touch with me, if I remember correctly, and he offers to buy one of my scripts, to buy one of my works. And what's more, he offered to buy the work for $3,000. Three chapters for $3,000. That was a huge amount of money for me because at the time I was working at a power plant for, if I remember correctly, $700 a month. Something like that, or $600 a month. Well, something like that. And I agreed to it. Naturally, they sent me non disclosure documents. We signed them and sent them back. I sold it to them, those three chapters. And slowly, the idea of moving to Japan started to form in my mind. I thought, why not give it a try? I like this country. I'd like to travel around it, see how everything is set up there, live there, even if just for a little while. At least a couple of years, and I start looking up information about it. I come to the conclusion that I need to enroll in a language school in Japan. So I choose a language school. We reached out and established contact with them, and they told me that I would need somewhere between $10,000 and $14,000 to pay for the tuition. That is for a period of 2 years living in Japan, if my memory serves me correctly. And I said, yeah, sure, no problem, let's work it out. But is it possible to pay for 1 year of study in Japan and then after I arrive there, pay the rest during the year for the second year? They agree. We shake on it, and I start saving money pretty seriously, saving up as much as I can. I do everything I possibly can. I sell honey on eBay. I would get honey from Siberia and ship it all over the world. Thanks to PayPal and eBay for making that possible, and for not having left Russia yet at that time. I actually made pretty good money back then. I bought equipment, graphic tablets, those big early ones, the first graphic tablets. I'll try to insert a portrait here. I rented them out to artists, local ones in the city where I lived. So I actually started collaborating with professional artists who would do initial sketches for me. What do you call them? Basically, they were creating the rough drafts for my comics and helping me visualize the story. And at some point, eventually later on, I came across things like, I don't remember the exact term for it. In English, I think it's called print on demand, where your drawings get printed on clothes, mugs, and so on. So you should understand what I'm talking about. And somehow I end up coming across this. So I encounter this phenomenon and I start working together with the artists. We had an agreement like this. I would tell them what to draw. I would look for what was needed, what was missing on these kinds of sites, these stores. They would draw it, I would upload it, and acting as a sort of middleman, sales would happen, and we would split the money earned. It was 50-50. And this particular arrangement worked exceptionally successfully, and for a very considerable period of time. So I eventually got to the point where I just needed to save up literally about a few thousand more dollars. I think about $1,000, give or take, before I could move over to Japan. We had already accumulated around, I think, 400 designs on those sites. And I was already thinking, that's it, my dream is about to come true. Not even a dream anymore. You could say it was a goal. I'll go to Japan, enroll in a language school, study there, get a better understanding of how things work, maybe even find a job there. And then suddenly, the whole system I had built just collapsed. The year 2014 comes, then the sudden annexation of Crimea happens, and my whole financial system completely falls apart because almost all of the hard-earned money I had previously made, I had converted into Russian rubles, and then they suddenly lost more than half of their entire value. If only you knew how depressed I was back then. It's hard for me to talk about it now. I think I'll stop the video for a bit and take a short break. Otherwise, forgive me, but I'll just say it. I'm about to cry just remembering it. It's really hard for me. My hands are shaking. Well, let's continue. I've calmed down a little. So, the currency lost half its value, our local currency, our local rubles, and some restrictions were introduced for citizens of the Russian Federation, and problems started to arise. But they were resolved successfully because I had friends. I'm grateful to them for that. Friends who live abroad. That's it. And then what happened next was that I fell into a terrible depression for about 2 months. It was like the ground was pulled out from under me. The chair was kicked out from under me. I don't even know how to describe it. I didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to do anything at all, and I felt really, really sad, really, really down, because I had been so close to my goal, something I'd wanted to achieve for so long. And honestly, yeah, it was tough, I'll tell you that. After that, I gathered my thoughts and composed myself, and then I firmly made the decision that I could actually begin writing my scripts right here. Basically, come up with stories in my head, then write them down, jot down some ideas. And I realized that I need to earn to start making a bit more money because I still have half the amount left to save, and not too bad actually. Back then, they paid pretty well for shift work up north. So you move from a big city with a million people up north to a worker settlement, and you live there in tough conditions. Really tough conditions. This settlement up north was involved in gold mining. There's a huge quarry there. I'll add some photos, all those that I have. And I also got a job at the power plant there and worked for a while. It was really hard because the shifts were 12 to 14 hours a day. You only had 1 day off a week just to do your laundry. And it went on like that for quite a while. Then, after some time, I'd go back home and then the cycle would repeat. I'd head up north again, turn money. Yeah. And just so you know, I never stopped studying Japanese. Even coming up with scenarios, I never stopped doing that either. I kept at it. I'll attach some photos for you to see. There were many times when absolutely everything was just completely and utterly overwhelming. A wet shift. If you got a tiny window, a little break, even just to eat, I was trying at least a little to study on my own because, excuse me, no one is going to pay for my education. No one is going to give me free time for it. So I had to figure things out somehow. But back then it was really tough, to the point where my eye would twitch. But after working there for a while and saving up some money, though not enough really, I decided to go back to the city where I started, meaning I decided to move back to my parents' city. Because rent there is 2 or even 3 times cheaper. Compared to the big city with a million people where I lived before, and I decided to really focus on selling products. Merchandise inventory on a variety of diverse online platforms, focusing specifically on the process of retailing products through eBay. So, yeah. Basically, I rent an apartment there in my hometown without any problems for 5,000 rubles a month. At that time, that was, man, I can't even say exactly how much in dollars. Probably around 100, give or take. No, actually, it was probably about $70, if I remember right. And basically, I started working hard, staying at home, talking with artists. I give them a task, they complete it, and we split the money in half. I have assembled a pretty good staff of artists. We start working. I am starting to study Japanese intensively, preparing for the Japanese language exam. Nihongo no Rokashken. So I buy tickets to Novosibirsk because that's where the Japanese language exam was held. I go there and I don't pass it because I failed the listening section. I was just a few points short on listening, although I did pretty well on the rest. I go back and keep working like that for a while, but because I was constantly at home, I barely went out, except to help my parents. They were starting to build a house for themselves. I spent a lot of my time helping out in the garden there. Most people out there probably won't quite understand it, but a lot of others definitely will. When you finally have your own piece of land and you cultivate your own fresh vegetables, sweet berries, and basically raise chickens and other livestock and all that. That's what we keep ourselves dizzy with. You could say it's farming, really. I help my parents out, and I just start to realize that my head is starting to boil a little from all this monotony. So I decide to go out and find a job. At least some kind of job in my town, besides the work I do online. Some people might say, "Are you crazy?" But I'll say, I'm just used to working. So I start looking for ads for some kind of easy job in my hometown. And I find a job posting for a street sweeper as street cleaner. You might ask, why the heck do you need that? And I'll say I was missing physical activity, so I decided to at least get my body moving somehow. At that time, I was already making money through my stores, the ones that printed merch and made sales. Those ones, yeah, and eBay too. I was making up to $700 a week, or $500 a week. $500 a week. That was the maximum my store could bring in for me. I decided to go work there. While I was saving up money to move to Japan, I realized I needed not just for tuition at the language school, but also for rent, for food, for clothes, for traveling somewhere. So you could say my youthful idealism had already faded a bit by then, and I decided to prepare for this more thoroughly. That's it. And to save up a bit more money. So I go to the organization. It was an educational institution for kids, and basically I come in for the interview and say, "So I'm here to apply for the janitor position." And they look at me like, well, you can tell just by looking at me that I'm not exactly a janitor type. They look at me and ask, "So what can you do?" I start telling them that I do graphic work, that this is what I do. At that time, I was studying animation a little bit. Well, actually, quite a bit. They look at me, the director, and the deputy director, and they say, "Would you like to work here as a teacher?" And teach the kids comics, manga, and animation. And I'm sitting there thinking, why not? I say, "Where do I sign up? How do I get started?" They say, "Well, come by after a while. We'll go through some courses, check your education, bring all your documents, and we'll see what you need." So I show up at the appointed time with all my documents. They look them over and say, "Yeah, you just need to go through this process. You basically just need some retraining, and basically you can start working." I say, "Great, let's do it." I finished this retraining in a week, even though they gave 3 months for it. There was nothing difficult about it. And already, on September 1st, here in Russia, kids start school on September 1st, I go to recruit my first group for animation, comics, and manga. They don't give me my own classroom. Instead, they put me in a room. In the past, it was primarily utilized for the intricate craft of scale modeling. Like detailed aircraft modeling, ship modeling, architectural modeling, and complex machine modeling. It was a really old classroom with very old machines, and almost none of them worked. The classroom is just completely run down. So they put me in this classroom and say, now, are you mostly going to be teaching here? I say, great, but what are we going to work on? Ha! It was really based on absolutely nothing at all. You see, at that specific point in time, our local educational institution and learning center only had a few very old, outdated, and slow laptops available for us to use. They barely worked, and they said, well, that's all we've got. I was like, great, guys. So I basically started bringing my own equipment to work, my own graphic tablets that I used to rent out in that big city. Graphic tablets, like these ones. Well, a graphic tablet like this. So you just take it and right now I'll grab a marker, not a pen, and basically you draw on it, and it's like drawing on paper, but on the computer. Yeah. And I bring a screen tablet, a display graphic tablet, which is expensive. I also bring it to work almost every day because the kids are interested, they really enjoy drawing, and I explain things to them. Honestly, my classes are kind of chaotic because so many kids show up. There's just not enough space. In the cost room, instead of just having one group, in the first year I had four. Like, they asked me, will you take one group? I said, yeah, sure, why not? And instead of the one group we planned to have, I ended up with four groups of 10 kids each. And the next year there were eight groups. It was really something else. It's actually really fun to look back on it now. The classrooms were always packed with kids. There was always some kind of craziness going on there. Everyone was doing something, everyone was drawing something. So we were teaching classes, and it was just a lot of fun working with the kids. Yeah, sometimes there were situations that had to be handled urgently. But overall, that was probably the best experience I've ever had at work. I'll include some photos of that as well. Yeah. And we started working with the kids in such a way that we began taking first place in competitions. We started taking first place in comics and animation across the country. Some of the kids even won in a few international competitions. I'll include some of their works as well. At the same time as my teaching work with kids in my city, I also offer paid consultations for kids from abroad, and I give consultations for kids from Russia as well. They also win some awards across Russia. I might include their work somewhere as well. You can check them out. Maybe I'll drop them in the description or somewhere else. And then, quite suddenly, the school principal just calls me directly into the main office and says, listen, we've received an offer. You're doing a great job. So, let's allocate some money to renovate your classroom. Just so you understand, it had only been 2 years since I started working there as a teacher. 2 years, and they offered to completely renovate my classroom, like fully, and buy any equipment I wanted for it. All I had to do was just point at what I wanted, and they would buy it for me. So basically, I said, sure, why not? Let's do it. We made a list of what I needed, and I said, let's just buy the essentials and invest in what we really need right now. Later on, maybe we can buy more. Yeah, no problem, they said. So we kept working with the kids on comics, drawing them with Fanga. We kept working on animation, but for a while we were kicked out of our office, where we had been for 2 years. And then renovation started there. It was tough, but the renovation was finished. And the office, I'll attach some photos, what it was like before and after. It really, really changed a lot. My colleagues said that we've been waiting for renovations for 5 to 10 years, and nothing ever gets done for us. But you came in and got all this done in just a few years. And along with working at this educational institution, I also keep doing my other activities. Selling goods and all that. I teach classes. I record a few courses for YouTube, sell animation courses, and just keep at it little by little. The money keeps growing and growing because honestly, there wasn't really anywhere to spend it. Yeah, I helped my parents with some construction, but that didn't take much money. Yeah, I helped my brother out. He helped me too. There were all sorts of situations because transferring money from abroad to Russia with PayPal, there were issues. Pretty serious issues, actually. So basically, almost all my money was kept in my PayPal account, except for a small safety cushion, and it was all kept in dollars. I learned from past mistakes not to keep everything in the national currency, and I thought I was protected from any mishaps, but that wasn't the case. The year I thought I would work through, my final academic year at the higher learning educational institution, was 2022. Well, anyone who keeps up with world news even a little bit knows what happened in 2022. Yeah, and all my savings, all my money I had set aside, it all goes down the drain. They just get blocked because I'm a citizen of the Russian Federation. The stores I spent 10 years building also just get blocked and deleted, again, simply because of that. No explanation given. Because I'm a citizen of the Russian Federation. And I was left with almost no money. I was left with nothing at all. That's it. It was hard to come to terms with the fact that you had earned at least some money over 10 years and lost it all again. And again, because of circumstances beyond your control. It's really tough, guys. That's how it is. And it went on like that. For a year, Mimi do, I just fell into depression because I also had guys, artists I worked with, and they were still getting sales. For a while, not actual sales, but these residual payments for goods that had already been sold. Like over a month or two. And I had to settle up with them, and the amounts coming in were more or less decent. And I had to give them the money. And I had this kind of cushion, a safety net that I had set aside for myself, you know? And these kinds of obligations to the guys, to the artists, the obligations I had to them. And, well, yeah, it was tough. My account with the money was blocked. I was cut off from my earnings. What do I do? I don't know. I just fell into depression again. And at that time, I was finishing up my last year, or maybe second to last year, at the educational institution because I realized I just couldn't teach the kids well more, especially with my depression. I didn't want to let that affect them, but it was really hard to work with them. You go in, teach them, have a good time. It's fun. You get a little distracted, but then you come home and it just eats you up. That feeling that everything is lost. At least that's what I was thinking at the time, you know? And at some point, I just finally decide that it is definitely time to move on. So I pack up all of my personal things once again, gather every last bit of my remaining money, and move to the large capital city. just to keep working hard, to at least make some decent money in the busy city. And well, I eventually managed to get a steady job. You know where, as a courier. No offense to couriers, but to transition away from simply being an individual who possessed the ability to create and produce, say, $2,000 or $3,000 a month working from home, managing and coordinating artists, uploading products, giving consultations, selling courses. I just become an ordinary courier. And I work like that for about 2 months. For 2 months, I work as a courier, more or less, and then I find the apartment where I live now. And basically, shortly after that happened, I managed to get myself another job working long night shifts in order to earn a bit more extra money. Right now, I work at a large distribution warehouse for a major grocery company. Again, maybe I will pin a video somewhere showing exactly what I do there. Basically, I manually unload and load very heavy trucks, handling big pallets filled with various goods that come in every day. In 6 months, I worked my way up to senior staff, senior night shift employee. And this grew, it's hard work. I injured a tendon in my AM back, but after a year and a half, I settled up with the artists. With all the artists, whatever I owed, I still have money stuck on Payball. It's frozen, it's blocked, neither here nor there, so it's like the money is there, but at the same time, it's not. You know, you could say I'm a working poor person right now. Nevertheless, I still persist in my teaching. Remember I mentioned my friend abroad, the girl who's a translator? She and I opened a few more shops, which are now registered in her name. And now I'm basically starting from scratch again, just uploading my work to these shops. There aren't really any sales there yet. And it's all starting over again. And I just don't get it, whether I'm just that unlucky or if it's something else. I don't know. It's hard to explain why I keep running into these kinds of setbacks in life. So, this video turned out kind of chaotic, just me sharing my story and my life. And about how I lost what, for me at least, was a huge amount of money. I know there are some guys I know and have known people who can blow that much in a single night. But the amount I earned was over $100,000. Yeah, in just one night. But damn, I'm just a completely regular guy, an ordinary person, from a very simple and humble family. Yeah, that's just how it is. I don't know. Maybe I'll probably keep making videos for this channel, just talking about what's going on, mostly to let off some steam, to share my thoughts and feelings with someone, just to get things off my chest. Or maybe to share some achievements. Like, one of my recent accomplishments is that someone gave me these cool things as a gift, and I finally sat down to start drawing. Although it's actually pretty hard to draw with injured tendons, I have to learn how to do it all over again. I was given these little figurines as a gift, so I practiced drawing them. They gave them to me for New Year's. And these little books, too. They're about drawing. Anyone who draws will recognize them, that's for sure. They gave me books about light and shadow. Japanese is back in the mix again. This is a Russian textbook for learning Japanese. And soon, a Japanese language textbook should arrive. Minna no Nihongo. Yeah. So, my depression has more or less passed. New Year's is over. We're starting everything from scratch. I can't. Damn. Honestly, it's really hard. What about you? What kind of situations or life stories do you have that you could share with me? I'm just curious, am I the only unlucky one? Or are there other people with similar stories too? There's a lot I left out of the story, a lot I didn't mention, because it's such a jumbled narrative. As I remember things, I'll share them and post them on the channel. Maybe I'll even make some animations about my stories. At the very least, like the story about the boat we stole when we were kids. When I was 7 years old, as people tell it, I still can't believe it. When my parents told me about it, I remembered it personally. Later, it all starts to fade away, to wash out of your memory. But when my parents tell me about it, I just get so amazed by it.
Yeah,
So go ahead and share your own story. Thank you all, and goodbye for now. I hope to see you all again soon.